Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming into the meeting. I see everybody is now starting to filter into the room. So thanks for taking the time out of your day, out of your afternoon. I guess I should probably say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night with all the time zones. Maybe that's more appropriate. But thanks for taking the time out of your day to join us for this CBAA member update. Got the team here with us, both from the office staff, our contract support, the folks that are here to lobby and action on your behalf. So I'm hopeful that this meeting will help you in kind of understanding where things are going. So the agenda, in terms of an update, you'll hear from me, of course, from Bob on regulatory and advocacy, as well as Ed. We'll also have some opportunity for Q&A. The chat is scheduled to be about an hour and a half. It is being recorded right now. So this way we can post this after the fact for folks that weren't able to make it, and they'll still be able to get the latest information. So let's start perhaps with the elephant in the cabin. That is to say, my choice. So after 7 years with the association, tremendous privilege to lead the association. I wanted to start a transition, and that's kind of where we are now. I started my tour way back in 2018 with this image, the image of leave the campsite better than you found it. And boy, did we go through a lot together. I mean, we've gone through COVID, elections, we've gone through luxury tax twice, we've gone through six ministers of transport. It's been quite a run. But what I'll remember most, of course, is the personal relationships, the connections with you all, whether it's through our chapter tours, whether it's at the convention, in the various airport committees, working with NAV Canada. All of the opportunities that we've had to connect have been fantastic. It's formed both the work that we've undertaken on your behalf here in Ottawa, but across the country. And so I really appreciate that. Moving to next, I want to thank you all. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us today. Uh, I have on this slide the idea of the member survey, which was recently completed, but I want to underscore and really drive home this point that your support, your feedback, whether it's in the recently completed survey or just in direct feedback to the team, identifying opportunity, allowing us the chance to connect those things really works together. So I want to kind of build this story as part of my update. I wanted to give you a little bit of a mindset now from, let's say, I'll be around. I will be supporting the association, its new leader, whoever he or she ultimately will become, to support the association, to support the work that we've undertaken. I'll still be here. But I wanted to share a little bit of insight, at least to how my 7 year journey, it'll be a quick slide, couple slides, but I want to share with you a little bit about how the inner workings on some of these things go. And, when I started, I remember thinking that perhaps what people wanted, members wanted, and what stakeholders needed is this clarity, like the black and white, the yes or the no. It's either this or it's that. And what you came to realize that, maybe it's strategic ambiguity. Maybe that's the line to call it. Maybe it's to find a solution that allows some flexibility for operators while focusing on safety. Let's say wide in the lane. If you remember that Seinfeld episode where Kramer is painting down the lanes just to create this super cruise lane, maybe that's the solution. But in the end, what I came to discover that successful advocacy, successful work with stakeholders, it doesn't matter if it's the airports, NAV Canada, the regulator, CBSA, etc. It really is about threading the needle. On the one hand, we have what good looks like to our members and what that membership, what the constituents look like. We have our management companies, our private operators, our associates, our affiliates. What does that all look like? Slides auto advance apparently right now, so we'll fix that in the future. But what does that look like when you thread the needle? And in the end, what it is taking your feedback in the forums that we have it. So taking the time like you are today to participate with us, the emails, the surveys, this is what allows us then to say, what does good look like? And how do we manage the issues of today so that we can prevent concerns and issues in tomorrow's time? And I want to kind of build this threading the needle theme a little bit further. So on this slide, really, I do have, in this case, what my updates were. And there's going to be basically four of them. The first is airports. Second, NAV Canada. The third, CBSA, those agents at the bottom of that business aircraft. And last is a little bit of a lens of the future, but I'm going to turn it ultimately to Bob and Ed to talk a little bit about the regulatory files. But I want to start with a story And it relates back to that survey comment. It's why I used that slide first about the survey. When we reached out, we have the issues with the four majors. The airports that I want to kind of brief you on are both the large and the small. Now, for the large, the four majors: Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Montreal. Since even before I was in the leadership role, I've sat on the Toronto Airport Committee. I mean, I've been around since I think it was like 2018 back then. Um, but the story I want to share with you is some of the feedback that we've received and how things have progressed. So, the hard thing about what ends up happening and threading the needle on this issue is that a large part of what starts with the plan. So, when the airports and Nav Canada collaborate about these programs to manage traffic, version A of their plan is never what is presented today. And version A and then B and then C and then D, and where we are now is probably M and N, and we're continuing on. A large part of the work that we're able to do on your behalf is through your feedback. Many of you on this call, I see in the participant list, are on those committees on all of the four majors. Now, your insight, your ability to spot the problems and perhaps identify some solutions is what allows us then to work collaboratively with both Nav Canada and more specifically the airports in this case. Now, I want to continue down this thread. The feedback was, look, some of the airports, sometimes they find it a little bit, tough to deal with the CBAA. On the one hand, you could say, hey, from a member standpoint, especially in 2019, this is the issue that came up and specifically in Montreal. If you recall, in 2019, Montreal and their construction was saying this was the number of movements for business aviation at that airport. Obviously, that's completely unacceptable to our industry. Never mind the hub that Montreal is to the economy and the province of Quebec. Never mind the fact that Bombardier and the production and all the work that happens there. We wrote some pretty direct letters to their board and more specifically members of the board about that impact. And sure, you create some opportunity, but in the end, friction is what creates motion. Movement is what creates this friction. We were able to overcome it. We continue with Toronto. If you recall on this Blue Jays, when the Blue Jays won and go Jays go, some issues came up with Toronto slots. And Toronto slots, literally even today at 1:46, many of you probably on this call that were on, we had an emergency call we facilitated with GTAA. It was related to ultimately and it appears to be Nav Canada, a number of filed flight plans that were going to come to Toronto. Nav puts in a GDP, a ground delay program, to manage what they think is incoming traffic. That traffic doesn't materialize, and so problems occur. Our FBO partners at Toronto experienced, just I can't even imagine the amount of concern that they heard from their clients, their customers, your owners, whatever industry of this segment you represent. But they heard a lot about that, and for good reason. We convened a call with GTA, and thanks to their leadership, we identified some short-term fixes. So right now we're not hearing those problems. We still have a long-term fix to go. And that is absolutely a continued focus. I brought up on the call directly, how is it that with the winter slot program now, and in fact, I think it was October 26th, that business aviation would have arrival movements, but no departure movements. If one thinks of the system, like the whole system, the net movements at the airport, if an arrival takes both runway occupancy time, taxiways, you got to taxi in and around, you got to get in and around the terminals, maybe it's the midfield, the north end, the south end, whatever. The point is we're still interfacing with this system. So how can the system say 15 arrivals, no departures for a 7-hour period? So this work continues. And that's going to be a theme that I want to bring up. But know that on your behalf and with your support, this is the only way that we can try to influence this program. For example, nobody in since 2019 has been fined or violated. I mean, if you remember, Toronto is was a 2-hour process. And as they improve, we need to leverage and work together to fix these systems or to make it such that it interfaces with our industry in the way our industry operates. And that's critical. So that is a continued focus at Toronto. When I think of the small airports, that is to say airports outside of that four major, just borrowing that term. Whether it was COVID, I remember still we have some members that were concerned about New Brunswick, and rightfully so. The challenge has been, and I'll tell also a story about ADSB. We continue to focus with Nav Canada, which will be a secondary briefing here, about levels of service. We're concerned with costs at the airports. We're concerned with what services are available there. And broadly speaking, of course, the economy. And that is going to be a continued focus of the association. We're going to continue to be that voice, your voice in these places that you can't otherwise be. So it doesn't matter if it's the four majors or any other airport across the country. Business aviation flies there, and we have an interest in what happens there. We're going to continue that focus. You're going to hear also an ask from me about that in the following slides. Second, I want to talk a little bit about NAV Canada and the role, the unique role that the association plays. If you're not aware, we have the ability to nominate to NAV Canada's board a member that represents what they call the non-commercial user. You could say that's us. In addition, we work with COPA to help find what are the issues of the day. How's the NAV Canada system across the country? What are the levels of service? What's happening in the West? What's happening with availability and how come numbers haven't been updated? We continue to press and work with NAV Canada to identify where problems are and find solutions. We have the ability to nominate to the board. The CEO of the association also has the ability with the NAV Canada Advisory Council, where I happen to be the chair, to sit with other industry peers. That is to say, whether you're regional airline, your flight training, your employee work groups, all of us come together to identify what those concerns are. We go across the country. In June, we were in Montreal talking about Porter's desire to expand to Saint Hubert and what that means, or Montreal Metro, what that means to ADM and Trudeau Airport, what that means to NAV Canada and service levels, all of the issues that you would suspect with NAV Canada. There is a place for you to help influence through the association exactly what's happening with NAV Canada. With CBSA, the folks standing at the bottom of that aircraft, continue. One of the things I'm most encouraged is their direction and their desire, at least, to leverage the technology of the day. So both Bob and I have been faced with CBSA about the future of how our crossings work for business aviation, how CanPass corporate works, what strengths can we build on with those programs in order to ensure that our crossings are seamless, easy, and make sense. Last is a little bit about the future. I want to talk about ADSB. One other comment that came through the member survey is, whether or not the association continued to press on ADSB. And the story I want to tell you is that not only Bob and I during our time together, but even predating Bob when Merlin was still here, the association has been pressing the situation that I had, and I've actually had subsequent conversations with the Director General of Transport, both current and former. I actually I happened to be sitting in a meeting in Ottawa, and I shared the reality that it's very easy, as you all probably know, to track LAD aircraft, the Limited Aircraft Database. You can go to Transport Canada's website, look up the civil registration of an aircraft, and see the hex code. Copy paste, go to your favorite ADSB exchange, Flight Radar 24, whatever. Copy paste the hex code, and if the aircraft's flying, you can see it. Now, we've asked Transport to say, why is this information available? Why don't you just obscure the hex code? Pretty simple request. It's on the website. We continue to press on this issue. Privacy about ADSB is not just about the movements of our passengers. And then especially if you're a corporate owned, wholly owned entity, you want to provide some anonymity to your operations for a whole host of reasons. If you're a charter management company, yeah, maybe it's more convenient to be publicly tracked, and this issue is not an issue for you. But this is why I said earlier with the operators and the constituents of our membership, the CBAA is a voice for all of business aviation, and privacy, ADSB, remains a focus of this association going forward. So what I want to say going next week, and as I think about kind of wrapping some of these issues, of course, we'll be monitoring the chat, and I'm going to turn it to Bob and Ed. But I want to leave you with a couple key themes and what's happening. First, next week, November 4th, we expect this new budget from the government. And the best way I could ask Grok in this case is develop somebody that's happy, somebody that's sad. That's probably what's going to happen with the budget. But in the end, what ends up happening is we need the opportunity. We want to find where there is opportunity in this budget. We need to use the language of the day of the government to construct systems and ideas that either of direct benefit to business aviation or allow us the opportunity to get in front of issues that are coming up. And I do want to say that we remain hopeful. We have some signals that potentially, and I hope that we have a more direct direction on luxury tax, more specifically the removal of aircraft. We remain optimistic in that regard, but of course, this budget, the potential for a subsequent election, is what everybody is waiting to see. So, it's like that expression, if you're not tuned into politics, maybe politics will turn on you. So this is something that the association watches. We've made budget submissions very direct about what business aviation needs and what are sensible ideas for aviation in Canada. And this is definitely something to watch in your area, and then together as an association, as your voice, lobby the government. So what I wanted to close on this slide is a bit like this idea that you're all taking time to be here with us. You could be in other places. And sure, a lot of these decisions, we happen to be in these areas that you can't otherwise be as your voice for business aviation. But the opportunity, that the crack in the door that's on the other side, is for you also to participate with the association. Stay engaged. Bob wants to know about the issues. Together, if we are aware, we can action quickly. You all are operating the aircraft, you're selling into the businesses. So whether you're an operator, you're an associate, you're an affiliate, you feel what's happening in business aviation on the ground level. And the way that we at the association can be most effective is to be plugged in, to get the signal from the noise directly from you. So that's what I wanted to leave you with here on this slide, is that if something today has compelled you to say, you know what, that's an issue I want to get to, please engage with the association and the staff through whether it's member support, us directly, this call today, our social media. The point is there is a place and you can help shape. And I've had the fortunate opportunity to do that over these number of years. So with that, Bob, I'll turn it to you for your government and regulatory affairs.
Thank you very much, Anthony. And good afternoon, good morning, and as Anthony said, whichever time zone you happen to be sitting in. Nice to be speaking with you and providing you an update of information. We're going to split this up a little bit for today. The first item, Ed Ratzlaff is online with us, and we're lucky to have Ed working with us. It's part of his work with us, and one of the main piece, while he does many things with us, one of the main pieces for us is the development of the Hazard and Trends report that we do annually. And I've invited Ed just to speak to that for a few moments, just to speak to the importance and what's there now, highlights, and in case you haven't seen it. So Ed, I'll pass it to you and then I'll resume after.
Okay, yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. If not, then maybe say something, but otherwise I see you nodding. Good. Yeah, so as Bob already mentioned, we annually produce the Hazard and Trends report. The last one was number 11, issued in February 2025. As already mentioned, about once a year we try to put that out. It's very high level because we're talking to all the CBAA members, and that is quite a wide range, everything from the PC-12s to the very large jets. And so we source a number of different sources, including the TSP, the CBAA NAD. We try and use that as much as we can, which is why we encourage the reporting, because that most directly speaks to the issues affecting Canadian operators. Again, it's a high level. There are statistics there, and as Mark Twain likes to say, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. So use those carefully. Use those with discretion. Use the information in the tables in the back to shed light on the issues that affect you. What is the number one issue in the country may not necessarily be an issue for you. And overall, Canadian business aviation has a very good, a very excellent track record, safety record. And from where I sit, from what I see, is I would not expect a Canadian private operator to be a contributor to an accident, in statistically speaking. But we do not want our private operators to be collateral damage either. So it is incumbent on all of us to be proactive, to watch out what else is going on. And if we can prevent an accident, if we can keep ourselves from being collateral damage, that might just mean that we've also helped prevent someone else from having an accident. So please take a look at the report. It can be found in the NAD or in the document section of the CBAA RMS. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me or reach out to Bob or Anthony. And with that, I'll hand it back to Bob.
Thank you very much, Ed. Just the last piece, maybe I'd like to mention on the Hazard Trends report. It's even if, as Ed said, the issues identified there may not be affecting you particularly. I think it's interesting to see the changes in the trends, because what we did is we were able to track back well before COVID. And the hazards and trends identified, obviously during the COVID period, everything decreased because there was less flying going on. But the hazards and trend types, they changed, and some of them drastically. So again, I think it's important to keep an eye on that and seeing how that impacts you. So, which is why we wanted to bring it to the agenda today. And we actually share it more than through the RMS now. We just go as widely as we can. So if I'm sending an email, I usually just attach it as a piece of information so that people don't forget. So moving on. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ed.
Maybe one last item. Just last week, I sat in on NAV Canada Aviation Safety Forum, and one of the items that kept coming up, it seems like worldwide, runway incursions, issues on the runway seems to be the number one issue that they're tracking and that they are concerned about. So that is one place to watch out for.
Thank you, Ed. So continuing on, I've got a list of items there that I'll walk through. Anthony's kind of touched on some of them, but I'll add some color detail to some of them. Other stuff is there for info and something to track on because we don't have that much information, but I think it's important to share. So the first one on regulatory updates, Transport Canada is working with the government on a program called the Family Assistance Regulations. This would be a set of regulations that would be more impacting our larger operators that we have within the CBAA and those that might be running on-demand charters and stuff like that. Essentially, they're trying to align with ICAO. This is something that came out of the ICAO audit that Transport went under. We are talking to Transport, looking at, given the unique nature of BA, we've already had one large briefing with them. Anthony participated in that. It's going back almost a year now. And I've had other conversations. And essentially, we want to make sure that business aviation doesn't get captured wholeheartedly, like Part 7 will be, like the large operators. Because what this regulation is all about is if there was an accident, essentially, what does the operator do to assist families with respect to anything that might have to be done post an accident or an incident? So very important to make sure that obviously we're part of the solution, but we're not roped in so far in that it causes pain where there shouldn't be. Coming back to the privacy and security, I only have identified one thing there, but there's two points to bring up. The first, because of discussions that have been occurring, especially on the manufacturing side, there's been a lot of conversations with NAV Canada, the manufacturing industry, and Transport at NAVCAN, as I said. As NAVCAN pursues where they're going to go below the current ADSB going into C, D, and E, Transport Canada said they do not want to go through the pain of the A and B implementation. So they've basically told NAVCAN they needed to go for a full aeronautical study, which we're expecting within a month or so to be issued. So as soon as we have that, we'll share it with the members. It'll be important for members to look at it. And then Transport has asked that once they get the study results, they will go through a formal consultation, which means a notice of proposed amendment going to Gazette 1 and Gazette 2, so that they don't implement the next phase of ADSB, whatever it happens to be, through the designated airspace handbook. There needs to be a formal set of regulations for this. So we'll keep an eye on that. The other point, and Anthony brought up, is on the privacy perspective. One of the things that's important to know is that Anthony says we are pursuing discussions with Transport, but we have also engaged with the NBAA. The NBAA have been having a large working group and nationally there to achieve the same objectives that we would like to achieve. They have had some gains. They have been able to disengage hex codes through special requests, but the problem there, it's only good for so many days. So now they're looking for other solutions. So they have agreed that the CBAA become a member of that group, and we will be participating virtually with them. And as things occur there, we'll be able to bring that to transport to say, well, if the Americans can do it, we should be able to do similar. And the other thing that obviously the NBA came to realization when we spoke is that aircraft that leave the US may be in a privacy mode, if we'll call it that. As soon as they cross into Canadian airspace and be under NAVCAN control, they are now visible. And so that's one point. It is also being discussed at the ICAO level, and NBAA and IBAC is working on that. So we're going to keep track on that. So I just want to mention that we, as Anthony mentioned, we are continuing to work on it, and it's it's high on our track, and we will be talking to Transport again in the next month, provide them an update. Next item, just very item we just and Ed kind of mentioned to it, the NAVCAN meetings. Ed and I participate in quite a few working groups, and we have identified some shortfalls within the governance, and those I reported back to Anthony as he was the chair of the advisory group at the high level. And so I think they've understood some of the issues, and they'll work on them. As an example of an issue would be activities occurring at one technical level, not necessarily telling the other technical level is happening, and then it comes up at a working group and nobody knew about it, and then the airlines and the members of that working group are all surprised, and so they have to go back to the drawing board. So obviously to try and avoid those shortfalls. Continuing on approach ban, Transport Canada had issued some preliminary work. We had provided a whole bunch of feedback, especially on the use of GFA, graphical areas. And thank you to some key members that provided a lot of that input. The input was accepted by TC, but it's gone silent. And so we're awaiting the next phase from Transport Canada. And as soon as we have information, we will share that. But it is still there, and they still need to do something there. Flight and duty time, they have the simplification initiative that's ongoing, and looking at, for the lack of a word, FRMS Lite, for those that would like to use it. They have issued an exemption so far. It's not applicable to everyone, but it's the first phase. And now they are working on a regulatory proposal. I did speak to the DG of Civil Aviation earlier this week. Apparently, the next phase proposal is drafted. It's up the line, going up to the minister to make sure that this does not cause any issues at that end of given that there was a lot of discussion for the initial flight and duty time. So obviously they have to convince senior management and at the minister level that this is a good thing. As soon as we have the information, again, we will share it with the members, and we will be looking for a member input on that. It would be very important for you to participate. SMS modernization, other than what we've shared so far, not much going on this. They've issued some preliminary information. Essentially, for CAR 604 users, is not much impact. All they're doing is they're moving all of the flight and duty time information that's in the subparts of Part 7 and 6 and moving it to Part 1. So the immediate impact for 604 users will be that they would maybe have to change their manual to change a reference, rather than saying, well, SMS as per 604 ... it'll be Part 1 ... And obviously it's a pain, but they will give a large time to get to that, because it's obviously it's not an immediate safety issue. There are other amendments coming to SMS at some point. There's no schedule to it yet, but we expect that they do want to implement in other subparts that are not there yet right now, such as 703 and 704. Lately, they have issued an amendment to Part 7 for those of our members that are 703 or 704 AC have an operating certificate. And again, they're not large safety items, but there's a lot of clarification and textual changes. A lot of it was aligning to ICAO, which means, again, work to create manuals. We have commented back to transport. They had provided some timelines for these things to be done, and they recognize that they may need to extend those. But they have provided, they're fairly significant so far. So in some cases, it's a few years to get there. So it's not a rush to the gate, but it is something you need to spend some attention time for if you're a 703, 704 operator. There was an exemption issued on CAMIs which essentially continued the extension of telemedicine under specific conditions. We have been continuing discussion with transport. The one thing that we did learn is that there might be some small adjustments. It's basically the number of telemedicine visits per, is it 1 to 2, 2 to 3? And that conversation is occurring within transport right now. They're tending to 1 to 2. So we'll see where that goes. And we should find out more. As I mentioned, Anthony and I are meeting with transport in the next month, and we will be one of the issues with that there. And also, and this will be more, I think, one of Anthony's last big discussions with transport before he moves on, but it's how to make better use or effective use of TELUS Health, which the association has gone to great pains to create a relationship with. And so we obviously want to have that discussion with transport. The last item on this page, or the second to last item, is the Global Aeronautical Distress and Safety System. And we have provided some feedback to the transport on that one. And again, it's a question everybody obviously wants to be tracked and want to make sure. But the way they defined it, they define it by passengers and weight of aircraft. And we have a lot of our members that have the aircraft that are in the large weight area, but essentially don't carry the passengers that weight would normally have. So they would be forced under circumstances to make changes to their aircraft to meet this regulation. But is it required really? So we've asked Transport Canada to look at the applicability and seeing how we can play around with that. Is it an and or an or? And how does that work? So we did the feedback. They've acknowledged us, and we should hear back at some point. Right now, the comment period just ended, so they're likely reviewing their comments. Finally, simultaneous independent parallel instrument approaches. Not a new concept, but they have issued, Transport Canada has issued some documentation and NPA on that. We have received some feedback from some members, and the way they wrote it would only be applicable to 704, 703 operators. But for those that are also 604s, there might be an opportunity for those larger organizations to do that there. They do it in the US. And so we've asked why did they define it that way? So it's a question of applicability. So we'll have to see what they have to say, but we've provided the feedback. The rest of it was fairly straightforward in the NPA. Just a few other items at late breaking.
Bob, before I go to the next one, I wanted to underscore a couple points on this. First, Bob alluded to a meeting next month. That's with the Director General of Transport Canada. So it's an opportunity for the association to be there on your behalf at the highest level possible, to be clear about what are the objectives of Transport Canada? What, as we talked about in my presentation, what's this new budget? What cuts, if any, are going to be made, or are they going to continue? What is the process, and what are they focused on in order to ensure that our efforts are aligned? I also wanted to flag a couple things. First, when I told that story about the large airports and the feedback received, there was this desire for a common platform, and I'm pleased to say that there is one. And as a result of that ICAO audit, Standard 821. Now, why is Anthony saying this thing about Standard 821? The reason is that Transport Canada now, and specifically related to the four majors, when we run into, and as I look on that participant list, many of our folks that were on that October 24th call with the GTAA are here. And Standard 821 requires that everything from capacity, transparency, flow management, improving it, stakeholder consultation, mandating that this is there, It also brings up the idea of VFR operations, so we can be transparent about that. So in the end, this is a common platform. So while the airports themselves have had different programs, now Toronto is the last holdout with this global portal. The point is that from a regulatory standpoint, in addition to the work that we've been undertaking with NAV Canada, with the airports directly and independently, there will be a space with Transport Canada to hold these entities, let's say, to account. So know that this standard A21 is something to keep an eye on, and we're pleased with that. So with that, Bob, certainly just wanted to apologize cutting you in there, but I wanted to highlight those 2 points.
Thank you very much. That's good. Before you change the slide, just one more point. One thing that it was good news is that over the last several years, Transport Canada has been working on some pilot projects around ATOs for training organizations, approved training organizations. They've finally moved to this next phase. And essentially, the two main service providers in this country are either there or about to be there, where they will be issued an MOU. And this MOU will essentially create them into an ATO until the regulations come in. So it's essentially an MOU in the form of an exemption type of thing. And it provides them all the conditions and the regulations. So at this point, Flight Safety International has received their MOU. CAE is on the cusp, very, very close, I'm told. And as soon as we hear about them, we'll make an announcement on our on the website, as we did with FSI. If you need more information, I would suggest you contact either organization, and they'll be able to provide their own detail. But this will be good for members and for pilots because it will resolve a lot of problems that you have now, especially with forms, having to redo forms because they don't like Transport did not like company ABC's form, and they had to have their form, and then you just kept redoing work. It was work for everybody. So that was a pain. And the other thing that was good that the association pushed hard is that the flight simulator, I'll call it the little urgency that occurred on a Friday afternoon several weeks ago, where because of Transport Canada staff shortages, flight simulators from the US mostly were not being recertified. And they'd say, okay, well, it'll take us X amount of time to get to it. Well, our pilots couldn't get trained. They would go actually do the work, but there was no paperwork because Transport Canada wouldn't accept it. So we told them to use their bilaterals. We basically told them the solution, and they implemented it. And so we're happy that that occurred. And it was minor inconvenience at the beginning, but now it seems to be working fine until they can staff up and get things going. So I just want to mention that. So maybe we can move to the next slide, Anthony. So just want to talk quickly about a survey we did, different than the CBAA larger survey. We were looking for feedback, and the survey ran between July 24th and August 8th. Why did we do the survey? Well, during the conference, Transport Canada stated that they wanted to work with the association to address and improve known challenges. So that's move too quick. And so it's an interesting set of comments, because now we have to know if the rubber is hitting the road. So we had to understand our own challenges. We hear a lot about stuff, but we want to get a bit more information. So we launched a survey, and just to see if there was anything new that we didn't really aware of. So the survey, three main themes came out. One was a regulatory theme. The other one was service or modernization. And the last one, we'll call it trust and confidence between TC and the stakeholders. And you can see on the screen the percentage of people. So they essentially evenly split between regulatory and service, and some folks that commented on the trust and confidence. So what were the key findings? Well, one of them affects some folks very specifically, but the simplification of the person on board, essentially the flight attendant. So that we need a simplified process. Our one member that's dealing with that on a daily basis. Well, this is a major pain point, and it came up but also from a user perspective, not only from the provider, but from the user perspective. Improve services and timelines. Always a high number of folks there submit something into Transport and takes forever to come back. So that's something that obviously we need to find some solutions, and some of those solutions could be through delegation, could be through just changing how we do business. Maybe they can provide more power to the association or to members themselves to be able to do some things on their own, or to third parties, but whomever. The fact is, we have to get there faster. We need consistency. You can't call 3 different offices of Transport Canada and get different answers. And they recognize that, and the ICAO audit found that. So they're working hard right now to restart their internal training programs and their internal advocacies that they do with their own staff. So I think that was a good thing, but we need to pursue that further. So what did we conclude out of this? Well, the survey aligned well with what we believed, but it put some emphasis on a few points, as noted above, that we'll want to work with. And also, we had asked in the survey if anybody wanted to participate on the working group, if one was going to be raised on a particular subject, and quite a few members self-identified to work on that. And obviously, we would not want to make it a burden, but really what we would need is resource people. I'm there, Anthony's there until for now, Ed is there, but we're not necessarily experts in all the field. So this is where member expertise is very important. And that's why we can, by having that, and we push behind that, that's how we get things done. And my last slide here. So where do we go from here? Well, as I mentioned, we're meeting with Transport, the DG Civil Aviation, plus his key leaders in his organization. And we want to talk about, as Anthony mentioned, government financial reductions, the impacts on CBAA, what's going to be the impact on industry. We have to know what they're going to do and not do. We keep hearing they want to do less. But what is that? And what, if they're going to do less, what does that mean? Do we do more? Do we do it differently? We have to know. We have to understand. We have to align from Speech from the Throne, which is about collaboration and opportunities, but also, as Anthony just mentioned, the budget. And we have to look at that and see where that goes. So the budget's coming out next week. Our meeting with Transport's a little later, so we'll have a chance to look at that and see how that plugs in, and obviously bring our own perspectives and being able to have that important discussion with Transport. We've asked about the TC regulatory program. Anthony talked about priorities. The last regulatory program that they published that we share, it's right at the bottom of the weekly, when I published the monthly update, the regulatory update. At the bottom, the last thing, regulatory program. And we essentially copy that and put our own analysis against each and every file. Sometimes we don't have much to say, sometimes we have a lot to say. But they haven't done that for 2 years. The audit is now over. So we've already asked them, where's the plan? What are you working on? We don't know. Are you working on priorities that are even of interest to us or of industry in general? Because we need to speak to our sister associations too to find out. And there's a lot of conversations that can happen like that. Then promoting and more flexible responsive regulations. These are particular files that have started and continue to do. One, board approval processes and CBAA operations manual. We've got to find a way to make that easier and faster, and not being stuck in mires of paperwork. And sometimes, especially for the larger members, if they introduce the same model of the same aircraft and it's basically a duplicate, why do they have to do so much work? All they should be able to demonstrate it is a duplicate and all that. It's a serial number. That's all it is. And maybe I'm simplifying, but the point is it has come to that on some files. Delegations. We want to increase delegations. Right now, we've hit a bit of a snag on the MEL. We've been able to issue MELs to 604 for 5 years. I'm glad to say that when I was with Transport still, I had a hand in that. They've kind of taken it away right now. We don't like Y days. They said that. So we're going back to Transport and we're going to challenge them on that one. We don't disagree with some of their reasons. We do need a regulatory basis to do delegations. And if we're going to have more delegation, it has to be built on a solid basis. But don't punish people and take things away just because. essentially what the reason was. Um, we go out and work with them on national interpretation harmonization. How do we do that? Your questions. Every time you bring a question, we're able to create a question to transport, because sometimes we can't do interpretation here. We can provide you what we think, but only transport can formally interpret the regulation. So what I've been doing is then we get the answers, we keep them, we post them, and essentially it creates a Q&A. So if you go on the website and you do a search, those will pop up. And that should be always a first place to start. Has the question ever been asked? Sometimes you'll ask the question differently. The answer might be different, but it's a place to start. So we continue to do that. So your input is very important on those items. Service standards, we have none officially. So they need to decide to, or stop telling us the service standard is 60 days. We don't have any. How can you tell us that? So that's that conversation that needs to continue. Medical program, telemedicine, and other items. So that we've already talked about that, and that's an item there. ADSB, we've talked about. One of the points I bring up again is awareness sessions. We do one today. And sometimes we've had also training sessions. We've had 2 so far on SMS related matters. And if there are things you would like to know or like to have a better input, we can create a session and then offer it to everyone, and then it also gets posted. So essentially my question to you is that what's troubling you? What would you like to know more about? And we can build something around that. The last point is the RMS. We have a number of members who actually use it. Some don't. It's not a compulsory requirement to use it, obviously, because you may have another system that's just as good or even better. It's possible. But we are going to start an RMS modernization. We know there's warts in the system and it needs to be upgraded. So we've initiated conversation with the developer, and we're trying to entice them to work with us on that. And if everything goes according to plan, and this is something we'll be pursuing with the planners for the conference, is I would like to have a period of time in the conference, we'll call it an hour, where those members that are users, we'll call them our power users, could sit down and we could have a user session and identify what could be improved. I know a number of things, Ed knows a number of things, but let's get everybody's input and we could get the system rebuilt the way it should be built. So that's a very quick update on the regulatory program. There's a lot more, trust me, but these are I thought were the highlights that I wanted to share for today.
Thanks, Bob. No, and before we break, really want to appreciate both you and Ed for the time, not just today. I mean, throughout the course of the year, if you're listening to this call or watching it on YouTube after the fact on CBAA, they remain committed to these concerns that you raise, that we identify, that we put in as part of these strategic plans and what we want to see from transport. So thanks, Bob. Thanks, Ed, the team. The work that you undertake on our behalf helps us find some meaningful ways forward. I do want to highlight really 2 elements here. The first, the telemedicine. You've mentioned it twice. And if you haven't seen, the reason why we bring up this idea of telehealth, we know, one, that CAMIs are difficult to find. So certification just for pilots, anyone that needs to get an aviation medical, is sometimes a challenge. But second, and more important, when you move across the country, you often, maybe you can find a family doctor, maybe you can. It depends on the region of the country that you're in, the province, etc. And what the association wanted to do on your behalf is, through this telehealth, create a program that allows our busy members access to their facilities. In other words, you can do a once annual physical health assessment and then get 24/7, 365 care throughout the year. So if you're a busy individual moving about the country, as many of our industry folks are, perhaps this can support you. And I wanted to underscore again, highlight this ADSB. I've talked about it. Bob's talked about it. We understand, in addition to the privacy components, even the cost components, how do smaller airports incorporate a landing fee simplification tool that leverages ADSB? This is something that's coming up. So again, Bob, Ed, I want to thank you for the leadership on this. But Bob, most with the time that you spend, the work that we've done together, it's been a fantastic experience. So thank you. So let's take the potential for some Q&A right at the end. I just want to help, let's say, pay the bills before we start to break. Membership renewals are just but around the corner. So hopefully this is just but one expression of the kind of work that we undertake on your behalf. So the team is here. Both Amy and Amanda are on the line in the chat. But of course, you'll hear from them on December 9th. So consider, of course, that your support, both you know, in on the electronic and in person, is critical. So look for those renewals December 9th. The convention, of course, in Calgary, our host, always a successful event. Hope to see you there. Great opportunity to continue this trend. We've seen some growth in terms of how we undertake the networking capability, the aircraft that are there, the ability to learn new ideas and connect with individuals across the industry and across the country is critical. And many, it's great to see some international counterparts, both from the NBAA, on this call with us today. Lastly is the fall chapter meetings in terms of the update. You see the dates on your screen. It's on our website, so you can reach out to member support at cbaa.ca if you got any questions about attendance, if you want to register. But there's an opportunity for you to get connected really in that specific region through our chapter meetings. So with that, I wanted to say thank you. And I know before I break, I think I got a note that Andy, our chair of our board, wanted to come online, and we'll still have an opportunity for QA. But I thought perhaps, Andy, if you are there and while I'm talking and I'm going to look, and you are off mute right now, perhaps, Andy, I could turn it to you.
Thank you. And thanks to yourself and to Bob and Ed for a great and enlightening update. Certainly a lot that you bring to the table in terms of your engagement with authorities. And I agree with you, Anthony, that this is a time of change for us in the country, globally, and I think that we're going to feel the impact of some of the reorientation, I'll call it, in the government. As much as that creates some issues, I think it creates some opportunities for us, for the association, to play a more active role in managing the affairs of our membership. So we'll be watching for the developments there. But specifically, what I wanted to do is take the opportunity, and if I go back to your opening slide with the tent and the leaving the campsite better than when you received it, I would probably say that within that story over the past 7 years, there were probably a couple of bear attacks that we did not collectively count on, whether it was the COVID and its impact, and the continuation of the economic upheaval that brought. But you've managed through your leadership to shepherd the association with poise and vision. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank you on behalf of the association. It speaks to your character and to your dedication to the association and its members that you are continuing with us through this transition plan. We are in the process of selecting a new leader, and you have committed to continuing with us through not just the some of the key meetings that the association is involved in, but also in ensuring that this new leader, before we hand them the keys, has got adequate orientation, because 7 years is a long time at the helm, and also you leave some very big shoes to fill. So I think I am unanimous on behalf of the board and on behalf of the association members in thanking you and wishing you blue skies. And once again, my appreciation to you personally. It's been a pleasure to work with you. And as we say in aviation, until next round, because it's a very small industry.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andy. No, I appreciate that. Well, awesome. Well, look, we're bang on time, but there's still time left for questions. So there is the chat, of course, and we can make that available. Certainly want to try to maximize that time, but we'll ebb and flow with the desire of you, the attendees. So I'm going to keep an eye on the chat, and while I'm talking, I'm looking down. Phil, I see it. You're on video. Why don't we go to you first? I think I was going to return a phone call to you, Phil. You were talking about some articles. So anything you wanted to bring up there about your vision of 26? How about that?
Well, it's kind of an interesting time, as you said, and I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't say I'm just been watching your hand on the tiller of the CBAA, and I have to just make that comment that the amount of professionalism that you bring to the table, your connections into all across the ecosystem. It's absolutely amazing. And as I compare and contrast you to other participants in the uh, in the Canadian landscape, I do want to say that you're absolutely, you know, uh, top drawer, Rolls-Royce, Merlin engine, like you're the guy. And I think as we've heard from the other fellows, that really large um, shoes to fill.
I appreciate. Well, folks, I did not pay Phil, but thank you, Phil, for that
No,
remarks. I appreciate that. But
well,
no, and as Andy alluded to, and I appreciate it, there's a lot. I mean, 7 years and the experience. I still want to continue to support the association, whoever that new leader is, whoever he or she is, um, in what they're able to do. There is a tremendous opportunity, and we're in a very interesting time, especially going ahead a year forward. So I will definitely be there to support that wherever I can, whenever I can, and however often they'll let me in the door. So for now, Phil, I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
so I just wanted to say I was trying to get in touch with you to have a conversation. I'm building my 2026 editorial calendar
Mhm.
for my articles at Wings Magazine. Um, and I'd like to hear from yourself as well as the CBAA members as to what they're curious to read about. And certainly we can, I'm sure there's lots of other folks with more compelling things to talk about on this call, but please give me a call, 416-578-7445, or email me, Phil at plaintalk.ca.
Thanks, Phil. That's great. And I'm sure that what a great opportunity if you're on the call, and it could be anything from a work, a project that you're undertaking, the vision that you've got for the year ahead. I think that'd be a fantastic because we need to celebrate the story that is Canada and aviation. So, Phil, really appreciate that. We'll definitely do that.
Thank
Thank you.
you, Anthony.
Anytime. Dennis, I see that you've come on video, so let's see what's new in Winnipeg.
Uh, Not a lot new in Winnipeg, but just a question for Bob. I don't know if you actually managed to connect with transport on the CVR and LDR issues we brought forward there.
Yep, I did, and essentially, I asked him if I could have a quicker response, but I'm meeting with the director of standards very soon. I think it's within the next week or two, and they've put that on the agenda, so we'll be discussing it there. I've already mentioned it to the DG that essentially what we perceive as an issue, depending on what they're doing. The immediate answer is that LDRs is not even on their radar right now, which is why I asked, well, what is on your radar? So as we get the larger answer, we'll get an answer on that one too. So
Okay, thank you very much.
next few weeks we should have an answer, and I'll probably end up writing an article just to give an update to everyone so that everybody has the same information.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Dennis. Then looking at the chat is quiet. Nobody's out there, and now you've learned that if you come off, if your camera comes on, I'll call you. So don't be shy. But if not, I'll take a pause and look over. Also check the phone because that's always fun. Sometimes I get direct messages. Um, I would say that, definitely will continue focus on that issue at Toronto. So know that the association, literally, as I might have mentioned it briefly, but today at 1:46, we got a continuation of this data, and we'll be working with NAV to understand how these bookings came about, what actually transpired, and how can we have a system that always reflects the reality of the movements needed at the airport. And we can't, and we'll work with GTAA to say the disparity between landings and departures that needs to be addressed. And that doesn't matter. We have some coming up, whether it's Montreal, whether it's Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver, or all the airports, when we get into that construction period, the pressure that both the airport has to do the work, the industry to move to those airports, move in and out of those airports. We're going to need to work on finding smart and practical solutions. But in no case can the answer ever be especially at those critical infrastructure airports, can the answer be for business aviation that zero or some unmanageable number that doesn't reflect the actual percentage of movements per hour is acceptable? No number less than that is acceptable. So we can all sort of suffer through some of the construction efforts. We all feel that equally we should feel some of that pain, but in no case can business aviation be the only one bearing the brunt of that. So I added a little bit extra there. Scott McPherson, look, he came on video. Scott, perhaps we could turn to you.
Good day, everybody. I just wanted to comment that you mentioned there were several mentions about various government movements or lack of movement, and I was fortunate to be in Dubai at the Middle East Business Aviation Show in December. Listened to a talk by one of their government folks who talked about their G4B, or Government for Business program. And then I spent some time going to our high north with Ali Al-Nakbi, who's the head of MEBA, and we had lots of time to talk as we drove the gravel road in one direction back. So anybody who hasn't driven to Tuktoyaktuk should do that. It's a great Canadian thing to do. And he talked about their zero bureaucracy move in the UAE. Now, I'm not saying that that is CBAA's responsibility, but if you want some inspiration, that might be a worthy place to look for to try and give some suggestions or have some idea of where you might press. I know that that's not a realistic expectation for a country our size, both geographically and in terms of our population, but it might be helpful. And then finally, it's more of a request from you and Bob. I am going to Ireland as I think my very, very last IBAC role. I'm going to be representing Canada on this panel in Ireland at their association meeting in a couple of weeks or a week and a half. So if we could have a quick chat later, I'd appreciate an update so I know what to speak on for you in this panel. Thank you, everybody.
Well, and I appreciate it. I mean, not only for those that know and don't know, Scott's been a fantastic champion, not only for business aviation, but for Canada and business aviation. So Scott, certainly, I know we've shared this before, but as I kind of look at this outgoing element, I certainly want to thank you for the time, the energy, the effort that you've applied, not just whether it's a training port or elsewhere beyond, helping move business aviation. So, and it's a fantastic comment, even the one about the government. Truthfully, that's what I'm looking for as opportunity with this budget is, even I had a conversation earlier today talking about urban air mobility, and we need a government that adapts, moves at the speed of business. We've used this line before. That's what our whole industry does, moves at the speed of business. So why then do we need to deal with the snail's pace and these ridiculous systems that we all agree need to be changed? So that's how refreshing it is to visit some partners across the other side of the world and see a better practice. So thanks for your leadership and thanks for the suggestion. We'll definitely get in touch. Thanks, Scott.
Okay, great. There is a final piece, and that was that you only showed us the trunk of the elephant in the cabin. The rest of it is about what happens after this, but I won't put you in the spotlight on that one. Thank you.
It's funny, Bob had raised that too as the C of G, and I said, well, AI, with AI, you can practically do anything. So we were way over gross with that elephant.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Well, in that case, then, folks, again, I'll say thanks to each of you. Andy, thanks for your comments at the end. It's been a privilege. Appreciate all the time that you took today to join us. Stay absolutely connected. I'll still be working with the association going forward. And together, we will absolutely continue to be that voice for business aviation. And if you have been inspired by some message, please get involved. It is the way that we can take your story. And again, I talked about that signal in the noise. It's the only way that we'll be able to influence what happens to us by being in front of those conversations. So thanks to you to taking the time out of your day, for joining us, and for your continued support with the association. Thanks, everyone, and we'll chat soon.